information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Although Will Charlesworth is a qualified lawyer, the content of this discussion is intended to provide general insights into legal topics and should not be relied upon as specific legal advice applicable to your situation. It is also Will's personal opinions. No solicitor-client relationship is established by your listening to or interacting with this podcast.
It's an immense power that needs to be harnessed. It's a question of knowing what you can do with it and what you cannot.
You're listening to WithAI FM.
Hello and welcome to the Law WithAI podcast. I'm your host, Will Charlesworth. I'm an intellectual property and reputation management lawyer. I'm also a member of the UK Parliament's AI All-Parliamentary Group on Artificial Intelligence. This podcast is about breaking down and understanding how artificial intelligence is challenging the world of law, of policy, and of ethics. Every couple of weeks, I will be looking at important topics, such as how AI is impacting on established areas of legal practice, how it's challenging the law itself on issues such as privacy and intellectual property rights, and how it's raising ethical concerns and ultimately reshaping the regulatory landscape. To help me in this task, I'll be having some candid and engaging conversations with some fascinating guests, including fellow lawyers, technology professionals, and policymakers, to gain a real insight into what it means not just for the legal profession, but for the commercial world and society as a whole. So, whether you're a lawyer, a policymaker, or you're just curious about how AI and the law mix, you're in the right place. So let's jump in, and I will keep you informed and ahead of the game. So, today I have the pleasure of being joined by the always fascinating Dr Christian de Vartavan, and I will get the letters after your name as well because they are very important. FLS, FRSA, CMLJ. Dr de Vartavan brings an impressive and multifaceted background to our conversation today. Educated at UCL, he serves as an advisor and chief consultant to governments, an expert advisor to the All-Parliamentary Group on AI and the House of Lords. His expertise spans roles as a global affairs analyst, global ambassador, keynote speaker, ethicist, author, and award winner. Additionally, as if you would need additionally, he also advises the UK police on blockchain and AI. Since 2017, Dr de Vartavan has been the founder and CEO of Projectis Consultants. He's also the CEO of Projectis Publishing as well. And my goodness, if I can call you Christian, gosh, you are a polymath is probably the best way to describe you. Thank you for coming on to the podcast. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very well, thank you, despite this, being quite busy. As you mentioned, I do a lot of things. CEO of Projectis, also the manager of Projectis Publishing, which is growing now. I'm increasingly interested in publishing for various reasons. We will get into that. But today we're here for AI, eventually blockchain. The two are not so disconnected. And I'm looking forward to hear, for your questions, really.
Thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to asking you those questions as well, because it's always fascinating when we get to discuss things. So it's clear you bring a wealth of experience and a unique perspective on the intersection of AI, ethics, and global policy. So if we delve into some questions, that would be great. My first question to you would be, and I think we'll come on to AI regulation very shortly, but just initially, how has AI changed how you do business and how your life has changed over the last few years? How's AI impacted on that?
Well, very often people say, well, this is an excellent question, and it's a bit rhetorical, but in this case, it's actually real, because take the publishing house. We're using 4 AI at the same time to enhance the publishing at all sorts of levels, from editing, from creation of book covers, from reinterpretation of text, and it's incredible. And the same applies to so many businesses nowadays can use that. I mean, I was asked by the police, how can we use AI? And I said, well, the first thing you can do is use AI just to rewrite text, speed up processes, reports and police reports. And because there is still a fear, I mean, the police and at the top level is still very anxious of how AI could sort of disturb, facts. But yes, it's an immense power that needs to be harnessed. It's a question of knowing what you can do with it and what you cannot. And, maybe face recognition cameras in the north of London, if we recall a certain incident, were not a very good idea. Although, from the point of view of security, it would help police, but from the point of view of human rights and without parliamentary consent, you can't do this sort of thing. But all the way down to, productivity, I would say. Productivity, AI and productivity are definitely connected. For the publishing house, the intention is to enhance productivity in any way. It doesn't mean that it needs to be used by in every aspect. For example, a lot of people now say that you can publish a book in a day. Just a time for you to take a coffee, you can write a book. No, I'm sorry. A good book takes months, usually years, in some cases. Writing a good book is something extremely complex. It needs to be original, and it needs the human input, and it needs reflections. So AI, yes, can be extremely useful, but we have to balance how we use it, and also because writing a book in a single day, yes, it could be. Many people do it, and they now sell them as ebooks, and they churn them one after the other. Will they be of interest to readers? This is a completely different matter, and there are all sorts of aspects. Even the author. I mean, if you're a writer, if you love to write, it's not just something you want to churn like in an artificial intelligence or an elaborate language model that actually would spit that. It's about you. It's your emotions. It's how you feel about something. And in fact, I've just received a manuscript. I was reading on the way here, and I'm not a novel reader, but the author managed to capture my attention because he raises some ethical, intellectual, theological questions which touch the areas in which I am more proficient, I would say. We have a reading committee for novels, delegate. But in this case, because that person was asking existentialist questions which are related to the human condition. And therefore, as far as I know, an artificial intelligence in terms of human condition is a bit remote. Now, even though if you look at Forbes this morning, there is a young, I would say, a wonder kid, who has announced that we'll reach, I would say, artificial intelligence in the sense of being conscious in 2025, and by 2027, AI will wipe us out from the surface of the earth, or something of that sort. Yes, well, I'm still wearing a tie. That's more than 100 years after, and I'm still wearing a suit, despite the fact that when I was young, it was said in 2000 would be all in vinyl latex, sort of zipped, sort of. Yes, yeah. So it might take a little bit more time, and also we're resilient. So sorry, I've extended my answer, but yes, to engage conversation, I think yes, the productivity is definitely something for which AI can be extremely useful, and I would recommend every small, medium, SME to use it. Large companies have understood already; they have the legal advisors to help them, so there's no need for that. But small and medium enterprises, yes, it's a must. You can't do without AI, and if you don't use AI, well, you're going to lose productivity. It's not like you're going to lose originality, and we will like ideas. We have many, many ideas, but from the moment you have you create this idea, and all the way down to actually implementing it, there's a long journey, as a matter of fact.
And that's a really interesting point. You were talking about originality, and that touches upon originality and creativity, particularly in the publishing world, has received a lot of news press recently, and it's good to hear that publishing is still valuing original thought over necessarily just producing content. I mean, I know that Projectis Publishing has got some very interesting titles and some very carefully chosen works that it publishes because it strikes interest and it contributes materially to something.
This is the case. Blockchain Impact innovated in the field of publishing. It was the first book which was made a block of the blockchain to protect its IP. The Royal Society of Art was very quick to spot that. The very morning we made the press release, they asked for an article, which is still online. And the idea is that with blockchain, you can protect the IP and of not only books, but articles and legal documents. The publishing world is extremely slow to adopt these new technologies, as a matter of fact. I asked Perplexity to make a report on what Projectis, the impact of Projectis Publishing's transformation of a book into a blockchain and block, and also the law I suggested we create in this country to ask printers to actually write the number of printed copies in the imprint of a book so that royalties would be duly paid to authors, because a lot of publishers do not pay the royalties to their authors, which are due, and that's playing through a sort of the sort of a type of contract which is net of profit, which means that basically the publisher can pay anything it wants, like champagne, holidays, and anything else. And by the time he spent all of that, there's nothing for the author. And then a very complex royalty statement is sent, which most people wouldn't understand. No, this is not the way it works. Author needs to be paid. So you remember that when I was part of the all-party parliamentary group on blockchain, I had a sort of little tantrum about the fact that one author had a bestseller book that was not actually rewarded, neither in the hardback edition or the paperback version, with a single penny of royalty. So the YouTube video is online. You can see that. And the reason that I sort of stamped, violently my fist on the table and with a big smile, though, because but I was referring to Oscar Wilde at the time, who died, and today some people live off the royalties of his work, whereas he died in poverty. We know that. Van Gogh died in poverty, and there are still some authors who do not get what they're owed, and this is unacceptable. Well, I can tell you at Projectis Publishing, we follow the Societies of Authors recommendation of 10% of royalty for the authors, and it's duly paid, and it's not net of profit, it's on book price, and it's how it should be. And because this is the honest way to do things. So Perplexity asked Perplexity to make a report on what was the impact of what I suggested, and it said none, not for now. I'm afraid that it may come. The evolution, for a start, laws are difficult to create. So I'm suggesting a law. It's for MPs and peers to reflect. But some peers, there was one peer in the room that day who actually got it, was extremely interested, and said, "Does it exist elsewhere?" And then I showed. Well, that was one of the questions, in fact. And I said, yes, in France it existed for decades. The number of copies printed needs to be in the imprint that goes to the British Library. Well, in France, the National Library of France, but here it would be the British Library. And this way, it's a way to protect the author, because if a publisher says it's a bestseller, well, a bestseller starts at normally several thousands of copies sold. So if the author didn't get any royalties whatsoever, there's something extremely wrong. Now, this is where blockchain, what I suggested is that the imprints also put on the blockchain, so there wouldn't be any argument of the number of books printed. But the publishing world has its own, pace of evolution. And for some publishing houses, they might not be happy at all about what I'm saying right now, but that frankly, I couldn't care less, because I'm on the side of the authors, being an author myself. I've written, can't remember how many books, more than 10, and 70 scientific articles, that sort of thing. And as a scholar, I've never been paid a single royalty. Although, to be fair, at the time I was employed by state institutions, so that was not my concern, really. I was not, But yeah, it's a big business. Academic publishing which doesn't, actually rewards scholars with any royalty is it churns billions of dollars of pounds of revenue every year, and the scholarly community is increasingly unhappy about that. Well, again, if you're a state employee, civil servant, or like in France, for example, there's the National Research Center. Well, whether you have your salary is one thing, but if you are in some countries, for example, where your university salary is not that important, which was my case for many years when I was in Armenia, it would have helped a little bit to have a bit of some royalties. So yes, so go back to AI. Yes, productivity, innovation, or and impact. That was the blockchain impact was the main themes with that, because we're yet to see blockchain to be understood and to be really used for what it is. But even though everybody understands that blockchain can protect IP and intellectual, very few companies or institutions use it actively. And there is certainly something to be done in the future, but you might argue that it's the dawn of AI and it's the dawn of blockchain, and let's see what's going to happen next.
I mean, it's a really interesting point. I mean, certainly from I understand exactly what you're saying about AI. I think that I've certainly seen in the last few years that if we go back, say 3 or 4 years, it was all about blockchains and to a certain extent NFTs caught the headlines for obvious reasons, and it was very much a big focus. And then AI started to come to the fore. Now, argue as to what is AI varies. It's a very blanket term applied to a lot of different software systems and a lot of different technical solutions. But certainly in the last couple of years, AI has come to the fore, and then blockchain has been relegated, not because of its technical abilities, but just because of how the press cycle works, basically. If anything can get great big headlines, then it's going to move up.
The hype is over.
One of the reasons for this podcast is actually to examine what the reality of AI is and what its real impact is and how people are using it and adapting it into their everyday lives, because I think there is probably a gap or a distance between what makes headlines and what is portrayed as being the future. In terms of in 3 years, do we need to be heading for bunkers or heading for the hills because humanity is over, or is it just that technology will evolve and it will change in its own way? How do you view the current state of AI integration? Do you think do you think on the ground it's different from what it's being portrayed as in the media? Do you think it's very different?
There are the real concerns, and there we get into the question of regulation. As a matter of fact, I've always been I've always had the position that, and we don't need regulation right now for AI, except in matters of national security, education of children, and other sensitive areas like this. So in other words, it's a balanced approach. I'm not saying we don't need regulation at all. And on that, we need to regulate. With my position about the EU AI Act, we can get into that later. No, I think the like Lord Tim Clement-Jones and myself and others, I think a balanced approach is what is needed. Where there are some areas of concern. If AI would take control of national security infrastructures, dam or whatever, we can't let that happen. It's not possible. And because laws are difficult to pass, there are two houses. It's a ping pong exchange, between them until the law proceeds, and it's a lengthy process, and rightly so. A law shouldn't be created lightly. It's a difficult thing to create a law. It needs a lot of reflection, but therefore we need to prioritize. And there are some areas, yes, like national security and other things like that, where laws need to be passed. Where the world of enterprise is concerned and entrepreneurship, no, I think it's the reverse. I think the conservative government, and I'm not pro-conservative or anything. I'm neutral, politically neutral, even though a bit in favor of the Lib Dem perhaps, but that is a personal, because I'm a liberal at heart. But the thing is, the Conservatives were right. Viscount Cameron and his team were right to, approach AI from the point of view of standards. This country sells a lot of, standards every year. I mean, not this year, but the previous year, I think, with £576 million were made just, by British, selling British standards across the planet, which is excellent. Actually, it's good for this country. Something that this country is good at. And I think we should proceed with AI cautiously, improve standards, so that later we can really define areas where regulation is not only needed, but valid, properly defined. And so this is a very important approach, and it's the one that is followed, generally speaking, in this country. But it's not the approach which is followed in over the world, everywhere. Chinese have heavily regulated in their own way and introduce socialist and communist values as a requisite for the algorithms. That's their way of approaching it, their own culture, their own country. The United States, nothing is yet defined. They struggle, Congress and Senate and other major, under the lobby of big companies, have not yet defined anything, although it has evolved recently in the past few weeks. I mean, there are. And in Europe, unfortunately, the EU AI Act has been created. I would say botched, because I followed the creation process. This night spent with no working coffee machine, where we're under a Spanish presidency that wanted to finish absolutely its mandate on the success, and on the other side, two MEPs who also wanted to put their names on a legal document that would affect the lives of 500 million citizens. Trying to convince, the only two AI companies in Europe, that's Mistral and the other German, I forget the name of which I forget, companies which didn't want such an act to be created, but they were, literally, I mean, we had some theatrical moments where the MEPs had threatened that, this needed to be signed, and they left the room, then they came back, and so on and so on. And ultimately, it was an overnight job where many chapters of the EU Act were not even finished, and that was passed as is. And the reason why, it's because of the wrong, in my opinion, European approach of the carrot and the stick. Comply will help you. Do not. Well, the new laws, related to EU AI Act will say that you will have to pay a certain percentage of your annual profit or I think it's turnover, and that is wrong, because it actually scares the hell out of small and medium enterprises to use AI. As a matter of fact, if I was the CEO of a European company, I would probably not go into the direction of using AI for that is for clients and that sort of thing, because that. I don't know how many, 3,000 pages of regulations, and all of that before Europe had any serious AI at the time to show for. I mean, now I understand that the French Mistral and were actually either working in the US or were bought by the US, or they were a brilliant team of young, coders and developers and whatever. But it was too early. You need to. In other words, they put the carriage before the oxen, and that is, in my opinion, completely wrong. But the worst part is that despite what the MEPs in European Parliament, in European Community says, it will hinder the development of AI in Europe. It will, because people will be very concerned that they don't have the resources to use the legal advice necessary to fully understand the regulation, because this regulation is extensive. Now, this is what some lawyers in this country would like to happen. Well, from the point of view of a lawyer, it's perfectly understandable. Lawyers, the legal sector loves when things are defined, because things are clear. There is a clarity, and then
there's a certainty of having the rules in front of you.
Exactly, and you can then charge your clients according to the fact that there is a lot of regulation, and second, because it's complex. It needs to be. If I was a lawyer, I would probably go in that direction as well, because it's in the interest of my firm. But if you look at the interests of the country as a whole, the interests of the SMEs, we need to look at the broader picture. Well, this is counterproductive. If you're going to scare a small and medium enterprise, that it will have to have a budget for AI, where legal, side is concerned. And second, it will fear that it might be held responsible for some parts of an algorithm, which they would have, on top of that, obtained possibly open source. It's very difficult to control everything. And they would be held responsible for anything that might happen. And look at the creative industry. The creative industry right now is mad. Many of them are mad against AI, and for good reason. I mean, AI, a lot of companies use the work that some artists have created, transform them, and even give them life in some cases. We've seen that this week with many paintings from grand masters, like being brought to life. But except these paintings are in the public domain, whereas what artists are creating at the cost of their sweat and blood and tears and emotions and passion is suddenly picked up by another company and used, and that's your area, Will, and used in an appropriate way without rewarding the artist. This is wrong. But on the other hand, you look at what has been done with the paintings of great masters. It's extraordinary to see these paintings we knew all along come to life, literally, where all the characters interact and so again, it's a question of finding the middle way to balance the interest of everybody, to play a fair game, and have standards to regulate, because regulating all of this is impossible. I mean, I feel sorry for MPs and peers if they had to regulate all of that, and they wouldn't have any holiday for quite a long time, to put it very mildly. And also, it seems to me that it's too early. Because AI is new, even though it's exponentially developing. And I would say not by the day, but not even by the hour, but I would say by the minute as we speak. It ramifies in so many directions, which I see in my field of publishing, or in technology, or archive management, because this is what we do with our blockchain. Well, we need to give it time, and we need to study, and all of this is going really, really fast. But a lot of the younger generation love that sort of I would say pace of development.
It's a very good point. I think they're used to having this pace of development because our attention spans have been shortened dramatically by
that's it. Back it up.
Social media, and I wonder whether it's possible. Whether in taking a step back and seeing how it develops, whether we may miss an opportunity to regulate or to add safeguards if it is developing so fast. It's interesting what you said about there's a balance there in terms of, do we regulate absolutely everything to do with AI, or do we ring fence certain core critical aspects, and how do we determine what is critical, or what would be critical to our national interests?
Well, our well-being, I think that would be a start. Our physical security, our mental security. So I'm thinking physical security, of course, army, government, critical infrastructure, the water systems, electricity. That's one. But our children too. I mean, there is this horrible story of this man who has, misled all these little girls to do things which they should not have done. And I was explaining to my daughter how he did. They said, she said, I think I know. And I said, I don't want you to just think you know. I want to explain to you what he did. Ask some photograph. He pretended he was a little girl, and then he asked for some photograph, and then he blackmailed the little girls to tell their parents, and the result is one of the most horrendous cases in human history. Now imagine that AI would start to do the same thing, impersonate not only the voice, but the imagery, everything. My daughter would have another little girl on the other side of the camera, and who would actually act in a way more convincing way, because we can see how AI can literally impersonate now anybody. So my recommendation to her, it's not a recommendation, I told her, you do not interact for the time being on media until you're 16, 17, and even then. You do not send anything. You don't post anything. You're not allowed because you'll have problem distinguishing for what is true and what is not, because we're now fooled ourselves, and we can get a phone call from our own mother asking us to do things which would be perfectly sensible, perfectly logical, except on the other side it could be a very elaborate language model. So these are the matters of security where we really need to at least keep an eye. But this is why also regulation in this case, the law of this country is based on precedents, and common sense. And that has the advantage over, I would say, a French system which is codified like the Code Civil, which has been created by Napoleon himself, a long time ago, and then evolved, of course, to be very rigid. But ultimately, the judges, use their common sense to when the law is not sufficient, particularly when the technology evolves at such a pace. What do you do when nothing in the code that you have relates to the crime that has been committed? And one of my cousins used to be a high judge, and he was telling me that before AI, some human cases were so complicated that he needed to refer to his colleagues who had, like him, 4 decades of judging to be able to sort it out. What about things which have been invented yesterday, of which we had no idea even were possible, and then where other human beings actually are very creative at using it in a negative or malevolent way? And what you do with that, then it becomes a question of intelligence, common sense, and proper judgment, analysis, proper judgment. You can't regulate as fast as that. It's impossible. You need it. This is why you can do some regulation on the cases you've had, or maybe some cases, but you need some distance. There's a need for distance between the moment the crime is being committed, the moment it's being judged, the moment this is at least. I'm not a lawyer, but as a lawyer, you will react on what I'm saying right now. It seems to me, in any case, the proper way to do things. Never rush anything. That's the one rule for us.
It needs to be carefully considered. And you raise a really interesting point around education and around informing people, or allowing people to make informed choices about how they use the technology. If we can't put that genie back in the bottle, there are certain aspects that will be very difficult to regulate, or it will move too fast for regulation, then the focus naturally falls perhaps on education and informing people. And I understand, having children myself, we get newsletters coming out every week from the school addressing different points. This is TikTok, this is a latest social media craze, or this is WhatsApp, but it's from the view of trying to explain it to children of different ages, because children mature differently as well, but also for adults as well, because perhaps we've become used to trading a certain amount of our privacy and our data, whether we consciously did it or not, for access to free technology, or access to technology that benefits us in certain ways. You raise such an interesting point as to whether do you think we need more education around what AI is, or what the impact of the technology could be?
I think you're absolutely right. And I don't know what is being done in schools to make children aware of the dangers of not only the media, but of AI, or even the parents, for that matter. Because someone could impersonate the voice of the parents while doing, I don't even want to think about what AI could do. But I think the Ministry of Education and teachers have I would say, need to be very well informed of the development of AI when it relates to education, because there are some potentialities of serious harm to the children. Touch wood, I'm touching wood there. I hope so far we haven't had a case, but we need to be prepared that something might happen one day. You need to anticipate that's what the police does, and it's what but we've the police is right now also going through difficult moments, and I'm sorry to say, but it struggles to innovate enough, in my opinion. Policemen are not happy, and I'm saying that so that maybe someone hears this and says, well, if to adapt and to innovate is the essence not only of the business world but also the civil service, and it's a necessity. Innovation is the big word that needs to be put on the wall and that everybody needs to see every morning when they go to their office. You doing the same thing all the time is counterproductive, and particularly as the same thing that's been done for a long time now can be cut short. And it doesn't mean there'll be less jobs or whatever, because that's another concern. No, it'll create new jobs. It'll create new opportunities. It will allow us to do more interesting things, including reflecting on what AI can do. Because there is another article in New York Times, I think, today, which says, we now have an AI that learns to create another AI. Well, we always knew this day would come, as we always knew that some AIs might go rogue, and then we'll need other AIs. Like we'll have a school for little AIs, and there will be a bunch of, essentially most AIs will be good, and then you'll have the rogue one on which the others will need to clamp and tell him, stop being naughty, because when you grow up, you're going to be a real nuisance for society. And that's exactly that. And I think we're going to get to the point where the question of personhood for machine has already been risen by the Swiss have created the law where a machine can be considered as a person. It's a question that rose in Parliament, and I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to have to consider that AI as a person responsible for its actions. And I don't know about punishment. It's a word that I don't like at all, and it's not part of the. This is very Europe. I'm for the European idea. I came here to fight Brexit, but when I see what Brussels does, Brussels is responsible for Brexit. That's the actual thing that needs to be said. The way it functions, the technocracy, and so on and so on. And punishment is not the way to go about things. This is something in which, in this country, I'm sorry, we do things much better, because it's about being responsible, educated. There are things which are not done, etc., etc., etc. And you don't need every 5 minutes to put a fine on. That's the problem of having a company in Europe. Every 5 seconds, or you're fined for this or that or whatever. I mean, even here, company's house, if you're late. But it's not to the extent that we have on the other side of the channel. And we don't take the identity card. So we're going to go and talk about a lot of things. We might as well throw it in. And, the ID card. A lot of people want ID cards. If we think about it, even the idea of a passport is that we all consider as something normal. Well, I'm sorry to say, but about 200 or 300 years ago, nobody was carrying around this piece of paper with a photograph on it and with a number. And so some people say, oh, yes, but we're protecting your interests. And yes, but we can protect our own interests. We don't want a state that is constantly above our shoulders looking at us and telling us what to do and what not to do. So yes, they're against the balance. A passport is useful, but when it becomes a burden, it hinders you to travel or, and so on, then there is real questions to be raised. And that this type of question is being raised by the blockchain community right now. A lot of people want an international blockchain passport. They want a no boundaries, ID, decentralized, nobody can tamper with. So nobody can argue, but it needs to be under the control of government. So that, we do what John Lennon wanted to see, a world without, boundaries and frontiers, an utopia. Well, the fact is, for thousands of years, there was no boundaries. This started when we settled and started with agriculture. And then from then on, things got really, really complicated. But for hundreds of thousands of years, we roamed the world, admittedly with less technologies, with less medical care, and I think it's in the life of Brian, where the question is asked, what did the Roman bring us? And then, well, they brought us this, they brought us that. Well, the world has to evolve, and we understand, but not at the expense of our freedom, of our human rights. And not, it's a crime in France. In fact, most Frenchmen don't know. If you are not carrying your ID, you can be fined, I don't know, 100 euros, or I can't remember the amount. It's a crime. So the police can say, oh, you haven't got your ID? We fine. They almost never do, because, it's already a sensitive topic. But that's not the sort of thing we want to see happen. I love to think that we can be in a world where we can be a bit freer in the way we do things, so that what we take as, today we take for granted that if I want to move from London to Liverpool, I can do this as I wish. But if you lived in the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century, just to go from one city to another, you needed a passport. This is where the state is what's called a tezkere, and you needed a tezkere. There is a document that allowed you to move from one city to the other, and this is unthinkable today. But yes, we think that boundaries, and this is why the idea of Europe was great. It was that boundaries were off. We could travel, and I don't know about the unique currency. It brought a lot of problems. The day the euro went into service, there was a 10% inflation or more, and it did put a lot of people in trouble. But yes, the idea is good. To have something which is common, and the world needs to evolve in that direction. Not in the direction where blockchain will be used to record our IDs, our data, and it will be immutable. You won't have the right to amend anything. And this is the wrong direction. The balance in where technology is concerned, having a balanced approach to its use is a critical aspect, really good. Particularly in view of the space at which it develops on a daily basis. That's simple.
So there needs to be, that's very interesting. So there needs to be a balance and perhaps a light touch to ensure innovation remains, certainly in the UK anyway, innovation remains, but...
And a good sense of humor too. That is something that is something which we prize very much in this country. We like to depreciate ourselves and a good sense of humor in all circumstances. This is what makes life really pleasant. Taking yourself too seriously, I want to refer to some of our cousins in Europe, some of them where you need, if you don't refer to a person by citing his double PhD plus his professor title, then you're committing an offense. So I don't think in this country we want to see that. And it's about the idea that, we can be sort of free. I mean, the law by essence imposes on us some dimensions which, of course, if we were living in the jungle, we might not have. But that's also the difference between civilization and non-civilization. This is what on that basis the Romans were able to actually kill a lot of people, so that to impose a law, which is still the base of our law today, a lot of people don't know that, which actually prevented a lot of people to burn other people for human sacrifices and all sorts of atrocities all over Europe. Those barbaric, practices shocked the Romans too, who were not, kindergarten, kids. But the law allowed to pacify, regulate a vast area, to create roads. And that's what we want also to see with AI. We want AI to help us. Now, as to Mr. Musk wanting us to buy a $20,000 to $30,000 robot.
I was going to come on to the robots because naturally it's what everybody goes to now. Well, I mean, when you mention AI, instantly the images that come up on most media is of the Terminator and of it eliminating all civilization. And certainly there've been plenty other movies around that. So yes, I mean, Elon Musk, he wants to push innovation at an extremely rapid rate, which is I suppose it's interesting and challenging at the same time.
Well, he's a genius in his own field, and he's a little boy in other fields too. I mean, if he wants to leave the planet and conquer space, that's also part of human adventure. I agree. But personally, if I had the same resources that he has, I would actually try to preserve the resources that we have on this planet instead of using them to create more machines to go somewhere else. That is ecology, environment. We see in which state the planet. Look what's going on in Spain. I mean, it's tragic. More than 200 dead because of those floods. And you can debate of why it happened. That maybe it's climatic change or not or whatever. But the fact is, we need to preserve the natural resources that we have. Spain lacks water. The irony is that Spain lacks water, and then suddenly they're flooded. The Mancha in the center of Spain is expanding. The government in most cases hasn't got enough water to irrigate Spain, and there we are. And we see that the whole country is flooded, and 200 people die in a horrendous circumstance. I've seen many videos, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Valencia and the areas I know. and you see those torrents, going down. Now, so Mr. Musk has first he's an atheist. You have to say that he doesn't believe in God at all. He believes in technology, which is, he believes in machines. And now he says that everybody should, well, he asked us, I've seen the video. He asked everyone, he said everyone should have one of those, this new robot. And this robot is $20,000 to $30,000. How many families can afford, a robot? And more than that, personally, I do not want to see robots roaming around my house or all the streets or whatever. I mean, whether I want it or not, some people might say it doesn't matter. You're going to see it in any case because maybe not. Maybe not. It's our choice to decide whether we want to put face recognition cameras in the street, when we want to do AI to regulate our lives. I think that was the New York Times article, actually. A journalist left AI regulate her entire life from top to bottom for a whole week. Shopping, kids, choice of garments, whatever, and so on. Well, I haven't read the end of the article because I got here and I but the thing is, no, he has no, as I said, no faith, which for me is a question because I'm a Christian, and let us remember that Christian moral is at the base of the laws of this country. Still, this is why you cannot have 12 wives, for a start, legally speaking. That's a Christian. And he doesn't. Therefore, he doesn't believe in God. He has in Christianity, of course, but he has extraordinary talents to use the means which he has managed to obtain through his intellect to create new adventures for humanity, which is commendable. But again, balancing what needs to be done in priority is the planet is polluted. Look at the rate some countries build. I mean, I like China, and I've just become an advisor to the Chinese government to balance things between the West and the East. But I'm alarmed at what construction rate, I like forests. In fact, when I came here, I was looking at this new area of King's Cross area. And I was thinking, everything is paved, but once upon a time, the pub that is down the road used to be in the countryside. And now there's no trees, no plants, no nothing. I was thinking we should pass a law that we actually put some flower beds, under the bridge, just to remind us that the plants exist, because we've literally paving everything. And when you see, for example, the building power of China, and God knows it's gigantic, we could actually pave the whole planet. We could actually, if let some people, they'll actually put concrete slabs all over the planet. It's perfectly possible. Do we want this? And this is why Parliament is important. This is why public debate is even more important, as a matter of fact, because Parliament needs to react to what the public thinks and wants. I mean, it's our choice. If we want to pave the whole country with concrete slabs, we could decide that. Whether it will be a good thing, I'm not entirely sure, to put it mildly.
But ultimately, the public needs to be fully informed of the issues so that they can lobby themselves. They can make their own informed decisions.
That's exactly that. Well, you're part of the all-party parliamentary group on AI, so am I, and you know the debates that are taking place under the leadership of Lord Clement Jones, who is a rather intelligent person, to put it very mildly. And it's a real pleasure to be there, and to everybody. A lot of people can come and ask questions, and this is how things are supposed to be, not unilateral decisions taken by either a number of politicians at government or some gigantic companies like Mr. Musk, who are becoming, he's behaving more and more like a state within the state. He challenges Brazil, even though and there's one characteristic of people with too much power, and that includes Mr. Boris Johnson and others, is that when the Supreme Court rules and it doesn't go into the direction they want, they criticize it. Same thing for the International Court of Justice in The Hague. When they decreed that Mr. Netanyahu and his equivalent in Palestine side were criminals, even Mr. Biden, I think, made a remark. And if we start to criticize judges when they, particularly at that level, when they've done their job, they're not there to, judges are not, I mean, some are politically orientated, many are, but it's not supposed to be like this. They're supposed to do a certain job. And if you criticize what high judges say, and conclude, you put the whole system in danger. You open the door for, Mr. Trump and others to just contest everything all the time. And we need to respect justice, and and its rulings. Of course, after that, if you disagree, there are procedures, but there are ways to do things. And if you like when a major power criticizes the International Court of Justice, well, I'm not happy at all, as a matter of fact. So we've covered a lot of things in that discussion, but I think everything is interconnected. You can't separate things anymore. Everything, whether you're cooking or you're going to regulate infrastructures, AI is everywhere. Alexa is here. On the other side, we don't have an Alexa for our government, but some people would love that, I'm sure. We would love to give our entire lives to some AI that would regulate us and tell us what is right and what is wrong. And what about our own, I would say, freedom and I would say, freedom of decision? So, yeah, difficult topics, but very, very interesting ones, I would say.
Fascinating. No, thank you very much. Absolutely fascinating. Set against that landscape, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for Projectis? What's either in the publishing or in consulting or?
Well, let's start. Projectis does two things. It has technologies and it has a publishing house. The publishing house till now was a sort of cultural dimension of a consultancy company in technology, which evolved in a technology company. But the thing is, I'm finding it more and more interesting. I find that we can publish books which are unpublishable or tell things and talk about topics that are different, that not necessarily what everybody wants to hear about. And I like that. I think you need to give it a try. In fact, we have, Karen Sai, my wife, has a project called Unseen Voices, where she would like to curate a number of articles for people who've never been published, who have different ideas, and she would like to curate it. This is something I'd love to publish, for example. There are other books on history, Egyptian history or other topics, and there are the books on technologies we talked about. Now, where Projectis is, where the technology is concerned, that my company won an award for innovation a few weeks ago.
Congratulations! That's really good news.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's been the award is best blockchain document management of the year. And that's because the SX4 blockchain I've created has the unique ability to work offline, which is also of interest to the police and government and that sort of thing, because I can guarantee 100% confidentiality on the documents that are put on the blockchain. So basically the blockchain, by working offline off the internet, everything is tied in blocks and hashes and everything. But then you press a button, it becomes, visible on the internet. Now, to be fair, it seems to me that the benefits of this technology are not understood as yet. And that is not a question of whether my own or my Projectis' technology is understood. I think it's just blockchain, which is as a whole not always understood. Some companies are doing extremely well using blockchain, particularly in the financial sector. Silently, they use it. They reap millions, if not hundreds of millions. Thank you very much. But very often when I talk to people, they say, "Well, blockchain, yes, but crypto, whatever." I mean, there's a big confusion. So I have a project to use the blockchain technology where it hurts, and that would be in the patent sector. There is a possibility to use it there. I'm not going to say more about that because there's an original idea I wouldn't like, people to jump on. Particularly, I've had it for 3 or 4 years, and it was something I had started to work. But I realize more and more that if the blockchain technology is going to be used in many cases, it's when there is a pain point. There is a problem that needs to be solved. So having an intelligent technology is not enough. What the intelligent technology needs to do is to solve a particular issue, and then it becomes real and useful. Okay, it's nothing new there. I mean, we know about that. This is the thing about technology. If the technology solves a problem, then you have many more chances. But I think in an idealistic way, I would have expected more companies to actually see the interest of having an offline blockchain much faster. And this is not the case, so I've changed course and will develop that new product very soon. In between, there is a product called Archivia that has been developed, which is for the management of archives, and it allows archives on any computer to be organized super fast and then thrown on the blockchain, on their own blockchain. This is all fine, but again, a lot of companies do not realize that A, their archives are an asset, and 2, with AI, these archives are going to come to life. An archive is not just papers and bills and whatever. It's a massive amount of data. And data is king. And when you have data and you can manage it, so properly managing one's archive is A, and properly analyzing the archive. So, and the difference is that the difference between AI and blockchain is marking. AI is super intelligent, but can mess things and do things on, and literally does do things that you didn't ask it to do, which is, being super intelligent can be extremely useful. And the fact that it would do something that you didn't ask it to do, very dangerous. Blockchain is exactly the reverse. It is silly in a way and disciplined. It's a block and a chain and a block and a chain and a block and a chain. It doesn't think. It's not there to think. It's there to record and make records immutable. Both have advantages. It's a question of using each of these technologies for their appropriate use cases. And I see very well my own blockchain being used, for example, for the land registry or very highly confidential police documents and I've made the demonstration in the Ministry of Justice. It worked absolutely wonderful. It was perfectly well. But it needs to be connected to what they do, and this is where there's a struggle. And so, because the police is struggling to innovate as fast as some of the senior police officers would like, and that's question of structure. But yes, who can actually pretend to have 100% security of their blockchain from the moment when the document is uploaded to the net? The moment you press the button and you upload your document, even if it's encrypted and so on and so on, you still have a risk of interception. By locking, being offline and off grid, it's 100% security unless you have someone in the vault and overlooking looking over your shoulder and having camera. I mean, yes, as a policeman said, yes, at that point it becomes ridiculous. At that point, it's not in the headquarters of the police that we would imagine this sort of thing happen. I mean, everything is possible, but it's much more difficult, to put it very mildly. So this is so yes, to answer your question, Projectis will innovate again where its blockchain technology is concerned, and also I'm trying to make Projectis Publishing a very modern publishing house, to put it very mildly, and one very respectful of the rights of its authors, because I'm not going to preach something in Parliament and do exactly the opposite. In other words, pay myself some holidays at the expense of my authors, champagne included.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Well, that's very good to hear, and it's good to hear that innovation, as you said at the outset, should be the word that everybody remembers each day. So thank you very much. That was an incredible whistle-stop tour around regulation, AI, and ethics and impact. So thank you very much.
Pleasure, Will. It was a pleasure to be here.
For coming in. Thank you. And I look forward to continuing the conversations at other times as well. Thank you.
Great pleasure, whenever.